Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. We're step by step, we're going back home, back to Godhead, by hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the literary incarnation of God. When Krishna left this planet 5,000 years ago, just after Parikshit Maharaj was cursed by a Brahmin boy to leave this world in 7 days. And rather than counteract the curse, he accepted it as providence. And he sat down on the bank of the Ganges. And all these sages came from all over the universe. And they all had different advice to give him about what to do. And they hadn't concluded. And then Shukadev Goswami came, just wandering around, naked, 16-year-old. Here he is, ranking. That's why we have this picture here when we read Bhagavatam. We have another picture when we read the Gita. Anyway, and as soon as Shukadev walked into the scene, everyone, except for his father, Vyasadeva, and I think Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, anyway, almost everyone stood up. And he was only 16 years old. And he was just walking around, he's just not like us taking a shower every day and putting on our tilak and, making sure everything is just right. And they had these girls and children were following him, making fun of him. As soon as they saw what was going on, they said, oops, we're in the wrong place, and they left. And everybody bowed down to him. Just by his physiognomy, just by the physical features, they could see that this was authority. And they put him on the seat, and he spoke the Srimad-Bhagavatam for the first time in Kali Yuga. So this Kali Yuga. So we are repeating this every day, and the Bhagavatam is organized in such a way that if you hear, oh my God, I hoped you could hear some of that. I just got the microphone and I forgot to ask for it. Okay. And so the Bhagavatam is compiled in such a way, it's actually like a script. It's an eternal scripture. And it's compiled in such a way that everyone plays their part in the unfolding of the universe. It's Shruti, it's an eternal scripture. And as Prabhupada said in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the only qualification is to very carefully go through it, verse after verse, chapter after chapter, canto after canto. And it's designed, if you hear it submissively in the proper consciousness, it's designed to expand your consciousness so that you can accommodate the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, and give up envy and lust and greed and all the things that keep us in this material world. As long as we are keeping those things in our hearts, we cannot hear the Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is the means and the end. By hearing the Bhagavatam properly and becoming inspired by it, we become purified in our hearts and our consciousness expands until we can actually see Krishna face to face in the pages of the Bhagavatam. So that's what we're doing here. Hare Krishna. And one of Lord Chaitanya, then Krishna came back again 500 years ago. Krishna came back 500 years ago. Hare Krishna, Uncle John. So nice to see you. Every day, every time we see you, it's nice. You're becoming a sober Vaishnava, senior Vaishnava. Hare Krishna. So now let's hear Sanat Goswami, his glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Purana, the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the same author, and the essence of the Shruti, Nigamakalpa, Taror, Galitam, Palam, the ripened fruit of the Shrutis, of the Vedas. It goes like this. Srimad-Bhagavata Mihima Stotram, the glories of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja, Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad-Bhagavata Prabho, Kalidwan Duritaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad-Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Mannisdanagam Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochata kara hanamunchagada chinmam premna ritkanta yospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we've reached the 25th chapter of the 4th canto. While Lord Shiva was speaking to the Prachetas, remember the Prachetas, and then Lord Shiva shows up. They were going to do austerities in the ocean, in the water, and Lord Shiva came up and then instructed them and recited wonderful prayers in the last chapter. Well, in the meantime, the father of the Prachetas, Prachanibari, Narada Muni, simultaneously met him. And Prachanibara is a very special person. He's the grandson of Prithu Maharaj. And so he comes in a very high line. But because he's a king, sometimes kings, they get very attached to opulence and to control, things like that, even if they're pure. Just like that time that Dhruva Maharaj just went and, declared war on the Akshas just because one of them killed his brother. So he was going to annihilate the whole. Anyway, Lord Brahma had to come and tell him, okay, enough is enough. Even though he was a liberated soul and he was promised by Lord Vishnu that he would go back to Godhead and given a planet that was an eternal planet. Anyway, you got the idea. The different natures in the world, all of us have now in the Kali Yuga mixtures of all of them. None of us are pure Brahmanas or Kshatriyas or Vaishyas or Shudras. We're a mixture of everything. The modes are all messed up. So, because Prachinabarachat became too attached to the opulence and to the perks of being a king, he started going out and killing animals unnecessarily just for sport, and became frivolous. When you're frivolous, you can't hear, you can't do anything. But so Narada Muni showed up because he was in the line of Prithu Maharaj, great soul, and he's instructing him. And that's what's going to happen now in the 25th and 26th chapters of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. We are on text 4. Narada Muni has just showed up. Narada Muni asked King Prachinabarachat, My dear king, what do you desire to achieve by performing these fruitive activities? The chief aim of life is to get rid of all miseries and enjoy happiness. But these two things cannot be realized by fruitive activity. Purport. In this material world, there's a great illusion which covers real intelligence. A man in the mode of passion wants to work very hard to derive some benefit, but he does not know that time will never allow him to enjoy anything permanently. Compared with the work one expends, the gain is not so profitable. Even if it is profitable, it is not without distresses. If a man is not born rich and he wants to purchase a house, cars, and other material things, he has to work hard day and night for many years in order to possess them. Thus, happiness is not attained without undergoing some distress. Actually, pure happiness cannot be had within this material world. If we wish to enjoy something, we must suffer for something else. On the whole, suffering is the nature of this material world. And whatever enjoyment we are trying to achieve is simply illusion. After all, we have to suffer the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. We may discover many fine medicines, but it is not possible to stop the sufferings of disease or death. Actually, medicine is not the counteracting agent for either disease or death. On the whole, there is no happiness in this material world, but an illusioned person works very hard for so-called happiness. Indeed, this process of working hard is actually taken for happiness. This is called illusion. Therefore, Narada Muni asked King Prachinabarishad what he desired to attain by performing so many costly sacrifices. Even if one attains a heavenly planet, he cannot avoid the distresses of birth, old age, disease, and death. Someone may argue that even devotees have to undergo many distresses in executing austerities and penances connected with devotional service. Of course, for the neophytes, the routine of devotional service may be very painful, but at least they have the hope that they will ultimately be able to avoid all kinds of distresses and achieve the highest perfectional stage of happiness. For the common karmis, there is no such hope, because even if they are promoted to the higher planetary systems, they are not guaranteed freedom from the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. Even Lord Brahma, who is situated in the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka, has to die. Lord Brahma's birth and death may be different from an ordinary man's, but within this material world, he cannot avoid the distresses of birth, old age, disease, and death. If one is at all serious about attaining liberation from these miseries, he must take to devotional service. This is confirmed by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 4:9. Janma karma chame dibyam evam yo viditat pataha tyaktva deham punar janma naitimam iti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Thus, after attaining full Krishna consciousness, the devotee does not return to this material world after death. He goes back home, back to Godhead. That is the perfect stage of happiness, unblemished by any trace of distress. Text 5. The king replied, O great soul, Narada, My intelligence is entangled in fruitive activities. Therefore, I do not know the ultimate goal of life. Kindly instruct me in pure knowledge so that I can get out of the entanglement of fruitive activities. Purport. Srila Narottam Das Thakur is sung, Satsanga Jadi Kainu Asate Bilas Te Karani Lagila Ye Karmabhanda Pangs. As long as a person is entangled in fruitive activities, he is bound to accept one body after another. This is called karma bandha pangsa, entanglement in fruitive activities. It does not matter whether one is engaged in pious or impious activities, for both are causes for further entanglement in material bodies. By pious activities, one can take birth in a rich family and get a good education and a beautiful body, but this does not mean that the distresses of life are ultimately eliminated. In the Western countries, it is not unusual for one to take birth in a rich aristocratic family, nor is it unusual for one to have a good education and a beautiful body, but this does not mean that Westerners are free from distresses of life. Although at present moment, the younger generation in Western countries has sufficient education, beauty, and wealth, and although there is enough food, clothing, and facilities for sense gratification, they are in distress. Indeed, they are so distressed that they become hippies. And do they still call them hippies now? Or
yes.
Still?
Yes.
Okay. I thought that was worn out. Indeed, they are so distressed that they become hippies, and the laws of material nature force them to accept a wretched life. Thus they go about unclean and without shelter or food, and they are forced to sleep on the street. It can be concluded that one cannot become happy simply by performing pious activities. It is not a fact that those who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth are free from the material miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. The conclusion is that one cannot be happy simply executing pious or impious activities. Such activities simply cause entanglement and transmigration from one body to another. Narottam Das Thakur calls this karma bandha pangsa. King Prachinabarishat admitted that this fact, and frankly asked Narada Muni how he could get out of this karma bandha pangsa, entanglement in fruitive activities. This is actually the stage of knowledge indicated in the first verse of the Vedanta Sutra, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, when one actually reaches the platform of frustration in an attempt to discharge karma bandha pangsa. He inquires about the real value of life, which is called Brahma Jigyasa. In order to inquire about the ultimate goal of life, the Vedas enjoin tad vijnanartan sagurum evabhigachet. In order to understand the transcendental science, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. I read this too, didn't I? Or maybe it's because, maybe not. King Prachinabarishat found the best spiritual master, Narada Muni. And he therefore asked him about that knowledge by which one can get out of the entanglement of karma bandha pangsa, fruitive activities. This is the actual business of human life. Jivasya tattva jigyasa narto yache hakarmi bihi. No, I didn't read this. As stated in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam 1-10, a human being's only business is inquiring from a bona fide spiritual master about extrication from the entanglement of karma bandha pangsa. Text 6. Those who are interested in a so-called beautiful life, namely remaining as a householder, entangled by sons and a wife, and searching after wealth, think that such things are life's ultimate goal. Such people simply wander in different types of bodies throughout this material existence without finding out the ultimate goal of life. Purport. Those who are too much attached to family life, which consists of entanglement with wife, children, wealth, and home, are engaged in kutta dharma, pseudo duties. Pseudo duties. I like that. Kutta dharma, pseudo duties. Prahlad Maharaj has likened these pseudo occupational duties to a dark well, andakupam. Prahlad has purposefully spoken of this dark well because if one falls into this well, he will die. He may cry for help, but no one will hear him or come to rescue him. The words Brahmyan Sangsara Vartmasu are significant. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 19, 151, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very clearly explains Brahmanda Brahmita Kon Bhagyaban Jiva. All living entities are wandering in different types of bodies throughout different planets, and if in the course of their wanderings they come in contact with a devotee by the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their lives become successful. Even though King Prachinabarishat was engaged in fruitive activity, the great sage Narada appeared before him. The king was very fortunate to be able to associate with Narada, who enlightened him in spiritual knowledge. It is the duty of all saintly persons to follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni and travel all over the world to every country and village just to instruct illusioned persons about the goal of life and to save them from the entanglement of karma bandha, fruitive activity. Text 7. The great saint Narada said, okay, listen up. This is Narada Muni speaking now. There's two major speakers of the Bhagavatam. Would somebody like to guess who they are?
I'll guess Shukadeva's one.
Yeah, but the one of the probably had the most presence is Narada and Brahma. Yeah, they're two very prominent speakers. Because the other ones refer to them actually. When they speak, then they go to these persons, preaching prayers. Okay. The great saint Narada said, "O ruler of the citizens, my dear king, please see in the sky those animals which you have sacrificed without compassion and without mercy in the sacrificial arena." Purport. Because animal sacrifice is recommended in the Vedas, there are animal sacrifices in almost all religious rituals. However, one should not be satisfied simply by killing animals according to the directions of the scriptures. One should transcend the ritualistic ceremonies and try to understand the actual truth, the purpose of life. Narada Muni wanted to instruct the king about the real purpose of life and to invoke a spirit of renunciation in his heart. Knowledge and the spirit of renunciation, jnana vairagya, are the ultimate goal of life. Without knowledge, one cannot become detached from material enjoyment. And without being detached from material enjoyment, one cannot make spiritual advancement. Karmis are generally engaged in sense gratification, and for this end, they are prepared to commit so many sinful activities. Animal sacrifice is but one such sinful activity. Consequently, by his mystic power, Narada Muni showed King Prachinabarishat the dead animals which he had sacrificed. Text 8. All these animals are awaiting your death so that they can avenge the injuries you have inflicted upon them. After you die, they will angrily pierce your body with iron horns. Purport. Narada Muni wanted to draw King Prachinabarishat's attention to the excesses of killing animals in sacrifices. It is said in the Shastras that by killing animals in a sacrifice, one immediately promotes them to human birth. Similarly, by killing their enemies on the battlefield, the Kshatriyas, who fight for a right cause, are elevated to the heavenly planets after death. in Manu Samhita, it is stated that it is necessary for a king to execute a murderer so that the murderer will not suffer for his criminal actions in his next life. On the basis of such understanding, Narada Muni warns the king that the animals killed in sacrifices by the king await him at his death in order to avenge themselves. Whoa. Imagine what's happening right now. How many billions of cows are killed every day? There's an actual statistic. Shiva Maharaj put out a vlog with the statistics about this. How many innocent animals are killed every day, or every year, by the human being? Billions. Billions. And we wonder why everything's so, becoming more and more uncomfortable. Weather, fighting, politics, quarrel. Narada Muni is not contradicting himself here. Narada Muni wanted to convince the king that overindulgence in animal sacrifice is risky, because as soon as there is a small discrepancy in the execution of such a sacrifice, the slaughtered animal may not be promoted to a human form of life. Consequently, the person performing sacrifice will be responsible for the death of the animal, just as much as a murderer is responsible for killing another man. When animals are killed in a slaughterhouse, 6 people connected with the killing are responsible for the murder. The person who gives permission for the killing, the person who kills, the person who helps, the person who purchases the meat, the person who cooks the flesh, and the person who eats it. All become entangled in the killing. Confirmed. The people who give... Narada Muni wanted to draw the king's attention to this fact. Thus, animal killing is not encouraged even in a sacrifice. Text 9. In this connection, I wish to narrate an old history connected with the character of a king called Puranjana. Please try to hear me with great attention. So this is very interesting, because this story that we're about to hear of King Puranjana is actually a story about Prachinibharichat. But because the king is too proud, he can't hear it directly himself, about himself. So he hears a story, an allegorical story. So when it's going to be an allegory, it says it's going to be an allegory. The rest of it is actually literal history. So please try to hear this with great attention. So because this is talking about us. Even if it's not directly talking about us, it's talking about all of us in this material world. Purport. The great sage Narada Muni turned toward another topic, the history of King Puranjana. This is nothing but the history of King Prachinibharichat, told in a different way. In other words, this is an allegorical presentation. The word Puranjana means one who enjoys in a body. This is clearly explained in the next few chapters. Because a person entangled in material activities wants to hear stories of material activities, Narada Muni turned to the topics of King Puranjana, who is none other than King Prachinibharichat. Narada Muni did not directly deprecate the value of performing sacrifices in which animals are sacrificed. Lord Buddha, however, directly rejected all animal sacrifice. Srila Jayadev Goswami has stated, Nindasi yagya vader ahaha shruti-jatam. The word shruti-jatam indicates that in the Vedas, animal sacrifice is recommended. But Lord Buddha directly denied Vedic authority in order to stop animal sacrifice. Consequently, Lord Buddha is not accepted by the followers of the Vedas. Because he does not accept the authority of the Vedas, Lord Buddha is depicted as an agnostic or atheist. The great sage Narada cannot decry the authority of the Vedas, but he wanted to indicate to King Prachinabarashat that the path of karmakanda is difficult and risky. Foolish persons accept the difficult path of karmakanda for the sake of sense enjoyment, and those who are too much attached to sense enjoyment are called mudhas, rascals. It is very difficult for a mudha to understand the ultimate goal of life. In the propagation of the Krishna consciousness movement, we actually see that many people are not attracted because they are mudhas, engaged in fruitive activity. It is said, Upadesho himurkhanam prakopaya nashantaye. If good instructions are given to a foolish rascal, he simply becomes angry and turns against the instructions instead of taking advantage of them. Because Narada Muni knew this well, very well, he indirectly instructed the king by giving him the history of his entire life. In order to wear a gold or diamond nose pin or earring, one has to pierce the ear or nose. Such pain endured for the sake of sense gratification is endured on the path of karma kanda, the path of fruitive activity. If one wishes to enjoy something in the future, he has to endure trouble in the present. If one wants to become a millionaire in the future and enjoy his riches, he has to work very hard at the present moment in order to accumulate money. This is karmakandya. Those who are too much attached to such a path undergo the risk anyway. Narada Muni wanted to show King Prachinabarashat how one undergoes great troubles and miseries in order to engage in fruitive activity. A person who is very much attached to material activity is called Vishayi. A Vishayi is an enjoyer of Vishaya, which means eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Narada Muni is indirectly indicating through the story of King Puranjana that eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are troublesome and risky. The words itihasam, history, and puratanam, old, indicate that although a living entity lives within the material body, the history of the living entity within the material body is very old. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung Anadi Kadama Pali Padi Babanarna Jale Tari Bari Na Deki Upaya. Due to my past fruitive activities, I have fallen into the water of material existence, and I cannot find any way to get out of it. Every living entity is suffering in this material existence from past activities. Therefore, everyone has a very old history. Foolish material scientists have manufactured their own theories of evolution, which are simply concerned with the material body. But actually, this is not the real evolution. The real evolution is the history of the living entity, who is Puranjana, living within the body. Sri Narada Muni will explain this evolutionary theory in a different way for the understanding of sane persons. Text 10. My dear king, once in the past lived a king named Puranjana, who was celebrated for his great activities. He had a friend named Abhigyata, the unknown one. No one can understand the activities of Abhigyata. Purport. Every living entity is Puranjana. The word Puram means within this body, within this form, and Jana means living entity. Thus everyone is Puranjana. Every living entity is supposed to be the king of his body, because the living entity is given full freedom to use his body as he likes. He usually engages his body for sense gratification, because one who is in the bodily conception of life feels that the ultimate goal of life is to serve the senses. This is the process of karma kanda. one who has no inner knowledge, who does not know that he is actually the spirit soul living within the body, who is simply enamored with the dictation of the senses, is called a materialist. A materialistic person interested in sense gratification can be called a Puranjana. Because whoops, I did it again. I clicked in the wrong place. I got it. Because such a materialistic person utilizes his senses according to his whims, he may also be called a king. An irresponsible king takes the royal position to be his personal property and misuses his treasury for sense gratification. The word Brihachrava is also significant. The word Shrava means fame. The living entity is famous from ancient times. For as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.20, Najayate mriyate ba. The living entity is never born and never dies. Because he is eternal, his activities are eternal, although they are performed in different types of bodies. Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. He does not die even after the annihilation of the body. Thus the living entity transmigrates from one body to another and performs various activities. In each body, the living entity performs so many acts. Sometimes he becomes a great hero, just like Hiranyakashipu and Kamsa, or in the modern age, Napoleon or Hitler. The activities of such men are certainly very great, but as soon as their bodies are finished, everything else is finished. Then they remain in name only. Therefore, a living entity may be called Brihachrava. He may have a great reputation for various types of activities. Nonetheless, he has a friend whom he does not know. Materialistic persons do not understand that God is present as the Supersoul, who is situated within the heart of every living entity. Although the Paramatma sits beside the Jivatma as a friend, the Jivatma, or living entity, does not know it. Consequently, Haribol Nitya, Hare Krishna. Consequently, he is described as Abhigyata Sakha, meaning one who has an unknown friend. The word Abhigyata Cheshtita is also significant because the living entity works hard under the direction of the Paramatma and is carried away by the laws of nature. Nonetheless, he thinks himself independent of God and independent of the stringent laws of material nature. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.24, Achetjo yam adayo, achetyo yam adayo yam, akledyo shosha eva cha, nityak sarvatakak stanur, achalo yam sanatanaha. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, all-pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. The living entity is Sanatana, eternal, because he cannot be killed by any weapon, burnt into ashes by fire, soaked or moistened by water, nor dried up by air. He is considered to be immune to material reactions. Although he is changing bodies, he is not affected by the material conditions. He is placed under the material conditions and he acts according to the directions of his friend, the Supersoul. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham ridisana vishto matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus the Lord, as Paramatma, is situated in everyone's heart, and He gives us directions. He gives directions to the living entity to act in whatever way the living entity desires. In this life and his previous lives, The living entity does not know that the Lord is giving him a chance to fulfill all kinds of desires. No one can fulfill any desire without the sanction of the Lord. All the facilities given by the Lord are unknown to the conditioned soul. Text 11. King Puranjana began to search for a suitable place to live, and thus he traveled all over the world. Even after a great deal of traveling, he could not find a place just to his liking. Finally, he became morose and disappointed. Purport. The travelings of Puranjana are similar to the travelings of the modern hippies. Generally, hippies are sons of great fathers and great families. It is not that they are always poor, but some way or other, they abandon the shelter of their rich fathers and travel all over the world. As stated in this verse, the living entity wants to become a Prabhu, or master. The word Prabhu means master, but actually, the living entity is not a master. He is the eternal servant of God. When the living entity abandons the shelter of God, Krishna, and tries to become a Prabhu independently, he travels all over the creation. There are 8,400,000 species of life, and millions and trillions of planets within the creation. The living entity wanders throughout these various types of bodies and throughout different planets, and thus he is like King Puranjana, who traveled all over the world looking for a suitable place to live. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung Karmakanda, Jnanakanda, Kevala Vishadabandha. The path of Karmakanda, fruitive activities, and the path of Jnanakanda, speculation, are just like strong pots of poison. Amrita Baliya Keva Kaya Nanayoni Sadapire. A person who mistakes this poison to be nectar and drinks it travels in different species of life. Kadayarya Bhakshana Kare, and according to his body, he eats all types of abominable things. For instance, when the living entity is in the body of a hog, he eats stool. When the living entity is in the body of a crow, he eats all the kinds of refuse, even pus and mucus, and enjoys it. Thus, Narottam Das Thakur points out that the living entity travels in different types of bodies and eats all kinds of abominable things. When he does not become ultimately happy, he becomes morose or takes to the ways of hippies. Thus in this verse it is said, Na anurupam, that the king could never find a place suitable for his purpose. This is because in any form of life, and on any planet in the material world, a living entity cannot be happy, because everything in the material world is unsuitable for a spirit soul. As stated in this verse, the living entity independently wants to become a Prabhu, but as soon as he gives up this idea and becomes a servant of God, Krishna, his happiness immediately begins. Therefore, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Mitchi mayara vashe yacha beshe kacha habudubuvai. My dear living entity, why are you being carried away by the waves of Maya? As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1861, Ishwarak sarvabhutanam riddhacharjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantrarudani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who were seated as on a machine made of the material energy. The living entity is carried in the machine of the body through so many species of life, on so many planets. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur asks the living entity why he is being carried away in these bodily machines to be placed in so many different circumstances. He advises that one surmounts the waves of Maya by surrendering unto Krishna. Jiv Krishna das e vishwas kar letar ar dukanai. As soon as we confront Krishna, Krishna advises, Sarvadharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vaja aham tvam sarvapapebhyo moksha yushami ma shujaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. Bhagavad Gita 1866. Thus we are immediately relieved from traveling from one body to another and from one planet to another. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Brahmanda Brahmite Konya Bhagyavan Jeev. If, while traveling, a living entity becomes fortunate enough to become blessed by the association of devotees and come to Krishna consciousness, his real life actually begins. This Krishna consciousness movement is giving all wandering living entities a chance to take to the shelter of Krishna and thus become happy. In this verse, the words Vimana Iva are very significant. In this material world, even the great King of Heaven is also full of anxiety. If even Lord Brahma is full of anxiety, what of these ordinary living entities who are working within this planet? Bhagavad Gita 8:16 confirms, Abrahma Bhuvana Loka Puna Arvartanorjuna. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. In the material world, a living entity is never satisfied. Even in the position of Brahma, or in the position of Indra or Chandra, one is full of anxiety, simply because he has accepted this material world as a place of happiness. Text 12. King Puranjana had unlimited desires for sense enjoyment. Consequently, he traveled all over the world to find a place where all his desires could be fulfilled. Unfortunately, he found a feeling of insufficiency everywhere. Srila Vidyapati, a great purport. Srila Vidyapati, a great Vaishnava poet, has sung, Tattale Saikate Vari Bindu Sama Suttamita Ramani Samaji. Material sense gratification with society, friendship, and love is herein compared to a drop of water falling on a desert. A desert requires oceans of water to satisfy it. And if only a drop of water is supplied, what is its use? Similarly, the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is Anandamayo Vyasat, full of enjoyment. Being part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity is also seeking complete enjoyment. However, complete enjoyment cannot be achieved separate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In his wanderings in different species of life, the living entity may taste some type of enjoyment in one body or another, but full enjoyment of the senses cannot be attained in any material body. Thus, Puranjana, the living entity, wanders in different types of bodies, but everywhere meets frustration in his attempt to enjoy. There's a chair over here in the corner for you. Hare Krishna. Where was I? Thus, Puranjana, the living entity, wanders in different types of bodies, but everywhere meets frustration in his attempt to enjoy. In other words, the spiritual spark, covered by matter, cannot fully enjoy the senses in any circumstance in material life. A deer may become absorbed in musical sounds vibrated by the hunter, but the result is that it loses its life. Similarly, a fish is very expert in gratifying its tongue, but when it eats the bait offered by the fisherman, it loses its life. Even the elephant, who is so strong, is captured and loses its independence while satisfying its genitals with a female elephant. In each and every species of life, the living entity gets a body to satisfy various senses, but he cannot enjoy all his senses at one time. In the human form of life, he gets an opportunity to enjoy all his senses pervertedly, but the result is that he becomes so harassed in his attempted sense gratification that he ultimately becomes morose. As he tries to satisfy his senses more and more, he becomes more and more entangled. This is like a ice water bath when you're drunk.
It's like a
Excuse me. Text 13. Once, while wandering in this way, he saw on the southern side of the Himalayas, in a place named Bhartabarsha, India, a city that had 9 gates all about and was characterized by all auspicious facilities. Purport. The tract of land south of the Himalaya mountains is the land of India, which is known as Bhartabarsha. When a living entity takes birth in Bhartabarsha, he is considered to be most fortunate. Indeed, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has stated, Bharata bhumite hoila manusya janmajar, janma sartaka kari karapada upakar. Thus, whoever takes birth in the land of Bhartabarsha attains all the facilities of life. He may take advantage of all these facilities for both material and spiritual advancement, and thus make his life successful. After attaining the goal of life, one may distribute his knowledge and experience all over the world for humanitarian purposes. In other words, one who takes birth in the land of Bhartabarsha, by virtue of his past pious activities, gets full facility to develop the human form of life. In India, the climatic condition is such that one can live very peacefully without being disturbed by material conditions. Indeed, during the time of Maharaj Yudhishthira or Lord Ramachandra, people were free from all anxieties. There was not even extreme cold or extreme heat. The 3 kinds of miserable conditions, adhyapmika, adhibautika, and adidaivaka, miseries inflicted by the body, the mind itself, those inflicted by other creatures, entities, and natural disturbances, were all absent during the reign of Lord Ramachandra or Maharaj Yudhishthira. But at present, compared to other countries on earth, India is artificially disturbed. Despite these material disturbances, however, the country's culture is such that one can easily attain the goal of life, namely salvation or liberation from material bondage. Thus, in order to take birth in India, one must have performed many pious activities in the past life. In this verse, the word lakshita lakshanam indicates that the human body attained in Bharatabarsha is very auspicious. Vedic culture is full of knowledge, and a person born in India can fully take advantage of Vedic cultural knowledge and the cultural system known as Varnashram Dharma. Even at the present time, we travel all over the world. As we travel all over the world, we see that in some countries, human beings have many material facilities, but no facilities for spiritual advancement. We find everywhere the defects of one-sided facilities and a lack of full facilities. A blind man can walk but not see, and a lame man cannot walk but can see. Anda, pangu, nyaya. The blind man may take the lame man over his shoulder, and as he walks, the lame man may give him directions. Thus combined, they may walk. But individually, neither the blind man nor the lame man can walk successfully. Similarly, this human form of life is meant for the advancement of spiritual life and for keeping the material necessities in order. Especially in the Western countries, there are ample facilities for material comforts, but no one has any idea of spiritual advancement. Many are hankering after spiritual advancement, but many cheaters come, take advantage of their money, bluff them, and go away. Fortunately, the Krishna consciousness movement is there to give all facilities for both material and spiritual advancement. In this way, people in the Western countries may take advantage of this movement. In India, any man in the villages, unaffected by the industrial cities of India, can still live in any condition and make spiritual advancement. The body has been called the city of 9 gates, and these 9 gates include 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth, a genital organ, and a rectum. When the 9 gates are clean and working properly, it is to be understood that the body is healthy. In India, these 9 gates are kept clean by the villagers who rise early in the morning, bathe in the well or rivers, go to the temples and attend Mangala Arati, chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and take prasad. In this way, one can take advantage of all the facilities of human life. We are gradually introducing this system in different centers in our society in the Western countries. One who takes advantage of it becomes more and more enlightened in spiritual life. At the present moment, India may be compared to the lame man, and Western countries to the blind man. For the past 2,000 years, India has been subjugated by the rule of foreigners, and the legs of progress have been broken. At the Western countries, the eyes of the people have become blind due to the dazzling glitter of material opulence. The blind man of the Western countries and the lame man of India should combine together in this Krishna consciousness movement. Then the lame man of India can walk with the help of the Westerner, and the blind Westerner can see with the help of the lame man. In short, the material advancement in the Western countries and the spiritual assets of India should combine for the elevation of all human society. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nobody can write like that. Nobody but Jai Dvaita Maharaj can edit like that. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll stop our reading for tonight. Narada Muni is beginning the allegorical story, and this is going to go on for quite some time, so fasten your seatbelts. You're going to hear a lot of direct explanations of what's going on here and what to do about it. Okay, so here we are, open mic session. Who's going to be the first? Take advantage of the open mic, have a reflection, anything that's stuck in your mind that you want to discuss more or inquire about or reflect upon, please be my guest. That must have been a pretty deep session. Everybody's very contemplative. Okay, Uncle John is taking it away. Senior man.
I thought it was the last part that you read was really good about how the Western countries and India, the blind man and the lame man are helping each other. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Ditto. Prabhupada talked about it a lot. And because the tendency is for the people of the West to become very proud by the material advancement and facilities that we have. You know, we're thinking there's a lot of complaining going on in America today because of, you know, lack of, and people living in the streets and, you know, things like that, losing their homes and everything. But still, compared to many countries, you know, it's very opulent here compared to other countries. So the tendency is to become proud, and therefore Prabhupada is always using very strong but very sweet words. That way sometimes when I hear it, I get a little overwhelmed because it's so clear and it's so obvious, and yet when you look out, you see how everybody's just completely bewildered by the material energy without any idea of what real happiness means. And they by blind, it means that they actually come to think that suffering is happiness. That's what intoxication means. You actually think that suffering is happiness. You have some, you know, hallucination by some intoxicant, and you think you see things, or, you know, pain of the body goes away, or, you know, you lose your inhibitions and you can say or do anything, and outside everybody's thinking, look at this guy, he's a complete madman. You know, but he's just thinking he's, you know, as we had to say in the old days, the cat's pajamas. They put a pajama on a cat. It's like they think they're real special. So, you know, Western civilizations, or especially opulent civilizations, they think they're the cat's pajamas. You know, they're just cats and dogs, but they think they're like, they've got pajamas on, so they're thinking there's something special. So we need to hear about these things because it's sobering. That's why Narada Muni came to Prachina Bharachat, and that's why we may be squirming in our chairs a little bit, having either taken birth in this country or somehow or other figured out a way to get to this country, and, you know, now the leadership is trying to keep everyone else from coming into the country, but they actually came to the country from somewhere else. It's a madhouse. It's a complete madhouse, you know. So this is needed. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada spent his life's blood, you know, compiling these purports to the Bhagavatam, to these deep Sanskrit, you know, we're not reading the Sanskrit, because when you hear these purports, the translation and purports of Prabhupada, you get the full blast, you know, and even people in India who know Sanskrit and have everything memorized, they've got not the foggiest idea. But when you hear from Prabhupada direct, oh, you cannot help but get the right idea. Therefore, keep on hearing, and even if it's a little painful sometimes, you know, even if it doesn't taste so sweet sometimes, you know, when your heart is cured, when you're free from disease, when you don't have the jaundice of material attachment, then you can taste sugar, sweet. But when you got jaundice and you taste sugar, have you had jaundice in the room? Anybody? Yes, I've had a big case. When I finished the refurbishment of that temple, I had a big case of jaundice. I looked like a banana. And taste sugar, not just bitter, but it makes you nauseous, just taste it. But the Ayurveda says that you take sugar in the different ways, and that's part of the medicine for overcoming jaundice. So you have to keep taking it. If you stop taking it because it doesn't taste good, then you don't get well. Bhagavatam is the sweetest thing, but when we're in material consciousness, sometimes it sounds a little unreasonable or heavy or difficult to hear. But if you keep hearing, in the association of devotees like this, it's obvious what happens. Just taste the atmosphere. You can cut it with a knife. So sweet. And intense. So intense. Yes. Sarva. Maybe the senior person in the room.
We read about King Puranjana, about how he was warned about the animals they had killed. The question comes up that there's some people that eat and kill animals that don't believe in God. They're just atheists. Some people believe in God and pray to God, and they seem to be on some rudimentary or more beginning level of purification. So there are some very strict kind of ideas of karma that you get from killing animals. So just the question is, if a person is a follower of Christianity or Islam, is not really such a fanatic, a nice person, but they're not elevated enough to be a vegetarian, is there any benefit for their faith?
This was discussed with by Lord Chaitanya to the Kasi, Chand Kasi. It was the very beginning, actually, of the Sankirtan movement. When Lord Chaitanya started the Sankirtan movement, he started having kirtan inside the house of Srivas Thakur, and only eternal associates were allowed in the room when they started. And sometimes people outside, they would get envious and they wanted to come in, and they tried to get in so many ways. One of them hid in a basket, and anyway, different ways. And Lord Chaitanya could immediately detect when there was someone in the room that wasn't pure, and he said, "I can't taste the prem, non-prem Sankirtan." And then he would find out who it was and then kick him out and then continue again. But after some time, after about a year of that, then the doors opened, and the event that caused the doors to open, was the Kashi, who heard complaints from the Brahmanas, not from the Muslims, but from the Brahmanas, because they were envious because this kirtan was becoming more popular and they were losing their authority, right? So the Brahmanas themselves started to complain to the Kasi, who was the Muslim ruler, about the Vaishnavas. They were making up a religion, and they were waking the deities and disturbing the deities and disturbing their sacrifices and whatever. And so Lord Chaitanya said, "Okay, let's take it out." And he organized within one night more than 100,000 people in one night, and they all went. There were like 1,000 mridangas. Just think of it: 1,000 mridangas, thousands of kartals, and thousands of people chanting Hare Krishna. 100,000 chanting Hare Krishna. What kind of kirtan that was? So the Kazi was terrified. This whole 100,000 people. That would be like more than a stadium of footballers. In England they have called hooligans, football hooligans. They go around and cause disturbance. Anyway, he ran upstairs and he hid, and Lord Chaitanya came and sat on his porch, and in the meantime the people started just devastating his gardens and all his fancy stuff, so he was the ruler. So then Lord Chaitanya said, "Go get him." So then somehow or other he got enough intelligence to come down, and they had a discussion on the Quran and the Vedas. And one of the things that Lord Chaitanya told him was that, "How are you eating your mother and father? It's not right." And then he said, "Well, why are you sacrificing animals in the Vedic, literatures?" So anyway, Lord Chaitanya proved through the Quran that Krishna is actually there in the Quran, described. You have to go a little deep to see it, but he's there. And then he touched the Kazi, and the Kazi changed. And then Lord Chaitanya said, "How is it you changed all of a sudden?" And then he said, "Well, can I tell you confidentially?" And so they went a little bit out of earshot, and he told them that last night I had this dream, and this half man, half lion person came and sat on my chest and put his nails right here, his claws right here on my chest, and he said, "If you do this one more time, you're dead." And then he went like that. and scratched his chest. And then he opened his kurta and he showed Lord Chaitanya the scratches of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nrsimhadev on his chest. So, but Prabhupada explained to us that, the different systems of religion are actually religion mixed with different modes of nature. Depending on the mode of nature you've acquired, the quality of your faith tends to be different. So when people accumulate together and organize different systems of religion, and it's coming from Krishna, it's all coming from Krishna, and because of the nature of the people in that area, the modes of nature in that area, sometimes different things are emphasized. Sometimes the knowledge is more, or sometimes the knowledge is less about God. Sometimes the rules are very, strict and disciplined, and and sometimes they're more, the difference. So Prabhupada explained that if they follow the system of religion, in one it's not supposed to eat this, in another place you're supposed to eat this, in another place to eat it, but don't eat it with any blood, or whatever. They have all these different systems, and if they have to follow, they actually follow, because they become accustomed to following authority, spiritual authority, and they submit to the authority, then gradually they make progress and take next birth in another more elevated spiritual process, until gradually they come to Krishna consciousness.
There's benefit in what they're doing if they do it nicely.
Yes, but if they don't, then they go to hell. We heard about that. We'll hear about it more in the next. We'll hear even more detail in the next canto. Yes.
How would you know if somebody is doing it nicely or not if they're still very much entangled in fruitive activities?
That's why the laws are there. That's why the laws are there. That's why the Bible is there. That's why Shastra is there. That's why Scripture is there. If you happen to get born in a certain place, in a certain family, and the Scripture is the Bible, and if you follow, the problem is that the leaders, or the spiritual leaders of these different scriptures, even the Vedas, now who knows? There's no more Brahmins. You can go to Mathura, and there's all kinds of people who are called Chatravedi. Chatravedi means four. They're supposed to know the four Vedas. That's where in the family they're supposed to know the four Vedas. You won't even find anybody that knows a few verses of the Vedas anymore. It's so degraded. Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu, I worked with him very closely for 5 years, editing Brihad Bhagavatamrita for Jayadvaita Maharaj. And he used to tell us, because he knew all these, because he was a great Pandit, great, scholar of Sanskrit. And, he would go out and talk to them, and sometimes he would speak Sanskrit. They were like really amazed that a Westerner could know all these things, And he found out that hardly any of them knew anything, actually, about the Vedas. So it's not just the Muslims or the Christians or the Jews or this. It's everyone. Even in the big Vedic guys, they're fallen. Now the Catholic Church, look what's happening in the Catholic Church. Even the topmost authorities, they've got a systematic way that they cover up their sexual abuses and all these different things, So they're not following. So that's the point. If they follow, then they may not get to Krishna Loka, but they'll get Brahman realization, or they get some pious activity, and they'll improve their next birth, and they'll continue, That's what Krishna says, Suchinam Shimatam Gehe Yoga Brashtupajayate. That if you don't, finish your devotional activities, whether it be yoga or some religious principles, then if you don't finish, then you come back and take a better birth, and birth in a rich family or birth in a pious family, that then you learn the principles of religion from the beginning and follow strictly from the beginning, and then you get in a better chance. But if they don't follow, if they're all, then the whole thing, that's why the world is in such chaos. The whole world now, I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you read the headlines, I keep up a little bit, and it's chaos right now. That's why what we're doing is so important. In this little room, I go and do this different places, and usually there's 1 or 2 or 3 people in the room. In this place, there's up to 20, 30 people now, devotees, almost every night. This is very special. Very special. It doesn't happen very often. So this is Prabhupada's mercy, because we're emphasizing Prabhupada's words direct. And it's so powerful. It actually gives us, it allows us to see really what's happening, and to be attracted to the right thing, and to realize, I better wake up here and get going, it's time's moving, and who knows what's going to happen. So this Puranjana story is particularly nice because it's very direct and very, it's indirect to Puranjana, but for us, to Prachina Bharata, but to us it's illuminating the verses and, saying things that we may not be able to hear directly in Prabhupada's purports. Take full advantage of it. Okay, I have to go now because there's a question. What is it? A reflection? No? So is it?
It's from Sudevi Dasi.
Sudevi in Amsterdam.
She's in Florida, actually.
Oh, in Florida.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Sudevi.
People in India want to have the material opulences of the West, and lots of people in America are seeking spirituality. Srila Prabhupada's white elephants are back in India, bringing their forgotten spiritual fortune back to them, and devotees from USA are practicing minimalism and living in India very simply with minimum necessities. It reminds the Indian-born people that they are very rich, and they were so fortunate to have been born there. Just thinking about the last part you read about Western countries and India cooperating to mutually lift one another and the world.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That was very good. That's exactly what Prabhupada's idea. That's what that purport said. So thank you very much for sharing that, Sudevi, and continue to share it with everybody you meet, because it's really needed now. So, because I have to read Chaitanya Charitamrita tomorrow morning, I got to get to bed on time. I haven't been the last few nights, and it's been a little struggling in the morning. So thank you so much, all of you out there in cyberspace and all of you here, for coming and hearing the Bhagavatam with us. Please continue. Don't ever stop, and Prabhupada will take you home back to Godhead in this lifetime. Gaur Premanandi. See you tomorrow night, same place, same station. Hare Krishna.